Hello, basketball fans. Today we're going to talk about a really fun topic, and that is the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie Irving, because things have gotten really weird. I'm going to try to keep this video focused as much on basketball as possible. I really want to talk about the Nets, their plan for the future, what they're going to do in terms of trades, in terms of Kyrie coming back to play, in terms of KD's trade request from this past summer, potentially starting a rebuild, all of that. That's really what I want to focus on. But I feel like I have to say before I even get into any of that, Kyrie Irving is a dope. He's a fool. He's an idiot. Posting what he did and then doubling down, refusing to apologize until he was suspended by the team. It's just not a good look. It's a culmination of a lot of things that have happened with him over his entire career. It's pretty clear what type of person Kyrie Irving is, and I want to be clear that I don't support him in any way. So there's that for you. And it's also to the point where I think I've lost faith in the Brooklyn Nets organization to do the right thing when it comes to PR crises and things of that nature, because they, just in the past week alone, they have fired Steve Nash, hired Ime Udoka, who obviously had all those allegations against him over the summer, which caused to him being out as the Boston Celtics head coach. The Nets are just going to say, forget that, we're picking him up right away. They didn't handle this Kyrie thing well at all. Took way too long to levy punishment against him, from the team perspective, right? The suspension just came out on Thursday evening, and Kyrie posted this, probably almost a week ago at this point. So the Nets clearly, all the reporting that we have is that Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, was kind of giving Kyrie a chance to really clarify his stance and make a full apology, and he didn't do that, so they felt that they had to step in and give him some punishment on their own. But I still just don't think that it was handled well at all by the Brooklyn Nets organization, and everybody just comes out of this looking very poor. So it doesn't seem like the Brooklyn Nets organization has a very strong moral backbone or some type of conscience that would allow them to make the correct decision, even if it might hurt them basketball-wise. Just a rough couple of seasons for this team. After they looked so promising a few years ago, that D'Angelo Russell team in, 2019, maybe 2018, they were a really fun squad back then. They had a lot of fun players, and they built the team the right way, recovering from that big hole that they dug themselves from that trade with the Boston Celtics so many years ago that cost them pretty much all their draft picks. That team, compared to where they are at right now, is a pretty stark difference, and it's just kind of sad to see. It's just so interesting looking at where the Nets have been over the last couple of years, because they had a legitimate chance to win the title in 2021 and they missed it. There's a lot of things that you can point to in that series. Obviously, Kyrie Irving getting injured, James Harden with the hamstring issue, Kevin Durant's foot being on the line. Had they beaten the Milwaukee Bucks in that series, perhaps they would have won the title, perhaps they would not have. They still would have had to go through the Hawks and the Suns in order to do it. Would they have beaten those teams? We will never know the answer, but that was their best chance. They didn't get it done, and it does certainly feel like their window is closed at this point. So where do they go from here? What's the next move for this Brooklyn Nets organization? Is it going to be a rebuild, or are they going to continue to try to run it back with this current squad? Things are up in the air right now. Obviously, we are not sure what's the deal with Kyrie Irving. He's suspended for at least the next 5 games, potentially more than that. That's all contingent on him completing training and issuing a public apology, which he did last night on Instagram. But he has to complete a checklist of things that the Nets organization has basically given him before he can come back to the team. So we'll see if he's able to do that, and if he's able to come back, how long that's going to be, or if he has indeed played his last game in a Brooklyn Nets uniform, because certainly that was the indication from a couple of the reporters yesterday. I believe Woj had a segment about that. Nick Friedel, he's on the Nets beat for ESPN, did say on SportsCenter that it very well could be Kyrie's last game in a Brooklyn Nets uniform. That could have already happened. So we'll see what happens from here with the team. It seems like they're certainly worn out from him. He's on an expiring contract, so if he does sit out the rest of the year, or if they end up trading him around the deadline, we'll have to see what happens from there. But it's hard to imagine a scenario where he's back with the team next year. He's effectively tanked his value on the open market. It's hard to think of a team that's going to be giving up anything of substance to the Brooklyn Nets to get Kyrie Irving on their roster. The Lakers were the team over the summer. We'll see how desperate they get by a couple of months from now. But there's not really any other suitors out there on the market for Kyrie Irving right now. So I think the Nets might just be stuck with him riding the year out, whether he shows up back to play, whether he doesn't, and just let his contract expire when we get to the offseason. So there's the thing with Kyrie Irving. We'll see what happens with him. Other than that, the question is, what's Kevin Durant going to feel about all this? How is he going to feel? Is he going to stick with his guns and, bring back up his trade request. We know he rescinded it near the end of the offseason, but that kind of thing never goes away, and that's probably one of the major reasons why Steve Nash is out as the coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Because when the superstar player calls for your job, it's just almost impossible to recover from that situation. So I really feel for Steve Nash. He kind of got the short end of the stick here, but KD ended up getting what he wanted. Now, will he feel like the organization has done enough to, really pander to him and make sure that he's happy there? Because he requested a trade for a lot of reasons. It wasn't just because of the coach. He also wanted the general manager out. He wanted Sean Marks fired, and that has not happened, and I doubt that will happen anytime soon. So he still very well might not be happy with the organization. We don't know where he stands with Kyrie, how he feels about the way that they've handled this entire situation. It's not hard to envision a scenario where Durant still does end up wanting out, and maybe that's not a public request at this point. Maybe he waits a little bit and makes another public trade request closer to the trade deadline. He is under contract for, I think, 4 more seasons. He signed an extension just last year, so he does have to stick around in Brooklyn if the Nets want him. We'll see if they end up honoring that trade request or not. But in my opinion, even regardless of what KD wants from the organization, whether he wants to play there or he wants to play somewhere else, I think the Nets should take a long and hard look at just trading him anyway. I think that there is a very solid argument to be made that that is their best course of action in terms of building a competitive team over the next couple of years, because they have kind of exhausted their assets. They got a couple of picks back in the James Harden to Philly trade. They used a lot of their picks in order to get James Harden, and then got a couple of those picks back from Philly along with Ben Simmons in that deal. So they have a couple of Philadelphia 76ers first round picks to work with, a couple of their own picks far into the future that I think that they can use right now. And then we'll see where they end up going if they want to try to restructure this team around KD and maybe hold on to Ben Simmons and a lot of their role players and kind of try to retool this after Kyrie Irving has walked away. There may just be too much baggage with this current team. We all know Ben Simmons, his mental struggles, his inability to be an effective offensive player. He's just scared to shoot right now. He's not playing good basketball. He seems timid out on the court. His chronicles have been well struggled to start the season. I don't want to pile on, but it's clear Ben Simmons has a lot of baggage at this point in his career, and being in this environment where things are stressful, things are not going well, there's a lot of drama off the court. It's just probably not conducive to building a consistent winner with this core group of players. I just don't think that they can really pull together a roster around KD and Ben Simmons and potentially even Kyrie Irving that is going to be close to championship caliber at this point. They lost a lot of their really good role players. They lost the three-headed snake with James Harden. Ben Simmons is a fine player if he is playing at the peak of his powers, but nowhere near the threat that James Harden is. But it just seems to me like the best course of action is just to kind of try and blow this up, basically. I think that the Nets should probably just start over at this point. They've had a trade request from their star. Their other star is not playing well, and their other star has so much drama off the court that he can't basically play for the team. So, it's just not going to work. I just don't think it's going to work. They're going to have to end up blowing it up. So I think they should look to get as much value as they can for Kevin Durant, and whether that means trading him at the deadline this year or potentially waiting until next summer. But I think by the start of the 2023-24 season, I just don't think that there's a world where Kevin Durant can be on this team. And honestly, I think the Nets can get a lot of value back. I mean, not just for KD, but I think they have some other role players on the team that really hold a fair amount of value out there that I think that they can get a pretty good rebuild started. Seth Curry, I think, is a guy that a lot of contenders are going to be looking to snap up. I think you can definitely get a first-round pick for him. Joe Harris, with the injury history and the big contract, who knows what you can get for that, but I think you can get some positive value out of Joe Harris right now. Patty Mills is getting older, but I think he's still a very valuable player on a fair contract. I think he can help a contender. You can probably get a pick out of him. Young Nick Claxton, he just signed a contract extension. I think he has some value for some teams. They just traded for Royce O'Neal this past summer, and he's had a really good start to the season despite the team struggling. I think he's been a bright spot, so he can potentially get you something back. You just flip him again. It's an interesting scenario because Ben Simmons' value is in the toilet. Kyrie Irving's value is underground right now. So you're not getting much for them, but just off the package of KD and a bunch of their role players, you trade everybody away, try to start brand new, try to start young. I think you can get a pretty decent rebuild started. Now, they don't necessarily want to be tanking because they don't really have their own first-round picks, right? If they end up being really bad, and at the top of the lottery, the Houston Rockets are going to be getting most of their picks for the next 5, 6, 7 years. So it's not like they want to completely bottom out. So maybe that means holding on to some of the role players and just kind of retooling, trying to find a different star to potentially, play some good basketball for them for the next couple of years. But doing that probably doesn't get you into title contention either. So the point is, it's kind of a rough spot to be in. But whatever the Kevin Durant trade package ends up being is going to be the future of the Nets. Whichever team they end up getting a bunch of first-round picks from, potentially a younger star, if we're looking for parallels, maybe something like the Paul George trade where they ended up getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Maybe there's a team out there that's willing to give up a star on a rookie contract that the Nets can kind of build around going forward. But I think this is probably the last straw. Tying it back into the Kyrie Irving thing, I think this is just the last straw for an organization that has been through a lot over the past couple of years. This is probably the one that broke the camel's back. So would not be shocked if we don't see Kyrie Irving in a Brooklyn Nets uniform again. Would not be shocked if his career in the NBA is potentially over. That might feel pretty drastic, but I just think that people are worn out on him, and I just don't know if anybody's really going to be willing to give him another chance. But yeah, that's the deal for the Brooklyn Nets. I think they're in a tough spot, but in terms of trying to start a rebuild soon, I don't think it's necessarily all doom and gloom, because I think they do have some assets, and especially with a KD trade, they can probably recoup a lot of stuff to vault them into a rebuild that it's a little weird because they don't have their own picks, but I still think that they can make something good about it. And if they can replicate some of the magic that they had, like I mentioned back with that D'Angelo Russell team in 2019, whenever it was, I think the Nets can potentially get back to being a fun basketball team again, and that's really what I think most of the fans are hoping for. So yeah, there you go. There's my thoughts on this insane situation, and I will be back on this YouTube channel when I have something fun that I want to talk about. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.